All right, well, let's start this again. So, hello,
Sure
thanks for
thing.
joining us today on Skyway Bound Presents. We invite all of you to stay up to date with our latest content by subscribing to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, which is Skyway Bound Present. Your feedback is very important to us because we want to make things better for you. So please leave comments in the bottom, hit the likes, and of course tap the bell, and you'll be up to date. So I'm your host, Walter Matthews with Skyway Bound Presents. Let's begin. Today I'm very excited. We have John Dengler from WellBuilt Bikes. He is the founder here in the Tampa Bay area. We're just going to roll right into it. John, how did this start?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a story there, so I don't know. It would take a long time to tell you all of it, but I'll go back enough. Let's say. So the bike shop, we didn't start with a bike shop, right? So my initial, let's say, the start of this whole story, I believe, was really connecting with a homeless man personally, which there's a bit of backstory to that. But when I was a senior in high school, I got in a head-on car accident, smashed every bone in my face, and you can't see because of the headphones, but I have a huge scar across my head, total face reconstruction, and I was in a wheelchair when I was put back into my senior year of high school, and it was the first time I saw, let's say, folks that I had not seen. They had been invisible to me, kids with disabilities and this and that. Fast forward a little bit to I had a, let's say, powerful religious experience by taking too much LSD one night, and it changed me forever. And along the way, I started getting really serious about just, say, questions of ultimate concern, philosophy, this and that. But I started to grow a conviction about, really, let's say, God's heart for the poor, or the place of the poor in society. And I began thinking, like, we're really wasting major assets here with these folks and their capacity and their experience and their perspective. And so initially I joined a local church that went out to share some food with the homeless, and I went and did that. And uh, that night I went home after meeting this beautiful brother in an alley. I remember the alley reeked of urine. I sat and listened to his story, and I was like, man, I've got so much in common with this dude. And yet I got a bed with an extra blanket. I got clothes in the closet, a fridge with food in it, a car in the driveway, air conditioning, hot running water. It's ridiculous, the wealth that we take for granted, the resources that we have available to us. And the truth is, I remember writing that night. I'm not a big journaler, but I did that night. I had a lot to process, and I wrote. I remember, I think a lot of people do this kind of thing to feel good, but I don't feel good. I feel like crap. Like, I have all of this, and I don't want to live in a world that works this way. And so the truth is, that's the origin story. But like, there's a long way to get to a bike shop. So I started making up excuses to hang out with the homeless, the working poor, and then talking other people into doing that. So like, I tell you, hey man, you should volunteer. You should come with me. It's a really cool experience. You can learn a lot. I mean, and then just make up excuses. People need food, they need clothes, they need whatever. And then just be in a posture of learning and listening. And I really went into these relationships in my own mind as the one that was needy. Like, I need these friends for their vantage point, their perspective, their wisdom. And then they lead the way, right? They say, hey, at the time, one of the first things I remember hearing was, hey, Tampa's great. You can almost always get something to eat, but on Thursday night, there's nowhere to eat. So we started a Thursday night dinner. Along the way, people said, man, we don't have work and we don't have food. And I was like, we got some land. Let's work together and grow some food. So we started some community gardens, and we ended up opening a daytime drop-in center for the homeless. Like, I was like, we're never going to get everyone a home, but let's set up a place where people can make themselves at home on a regular basis. We did that in 2 different locations, both of which end up getting run out of the neighborhood, because all poor neighborhoods are eventually not poor neighborhoods. Once they hit 100 years old, they're historic. Money starts moving in and buying up the property, and then we're going to get moved along. And we got moved along pretty aggressively here. And that was actually, so at the drop-in center, we were in Tampa Heights, which, if you look around Tampa Heights, where all the cool pubs and coffee shops are now. But back then, it was a poor Black and brown community that had a lot of need, a lot of ministries working with the homeless, the Robles housing projects, and a lot of our friends that live right there. I actually lived right in the neighborhood there, or right next to that neighborhood in Ybor Heights. Anyway, we started working there and just hanging out with folks. And one of our volunteers rode bicycles, and a couple guys on the streets, a couple gals on the streets rode bicycles. And one day I caught her. Her name was Jessica Brenner. She was helping a guy fix, I think, a flat. And I just fell in love with it. And I was like, yo, keep doing that. pushing her. I think I showed up with a toolbox, and she's like, I'm not here to work on bikes. I'm here to hang out with people. I was like, great, hang out with people with bikes. And doing my vision casting thing, could you imagine if there was like a bike shop? And well, what happened over time is she ended up getting like 25 bikes donated. So I got an old shipping container. We called it the recycle bin. We put it behind the container. There was never anything done with money. In fact, we proudly were like, no forms of payment taken here, all gift economy. I was like, look, if you need transportation, go figure it out. There's broken bikes, there's tools, you can get out there and figure it out. And then the volunteer kind of coordinator role, Jessica's role in that, really with a couple other volunteers, was just keep people from killing each other, keep it somewhat sane, you know what I mean? And that really went well. We saw over 1,000 bikes built in just a couple years, just turning it over to folks. It was incredible. But what we learned kind of as we got run out of the neighborhood, and I did kind of an analysis, you're familiar with like the 80-20 analysis. I looked at everything we've done. And I was like, it's kind of a happy accident, but the bicycles were the best thing we ever did. One, they're great for your physical health. They're great for your mental health. They're great for your ability to connect. This is meaningful work that people put in sweat equity to get to meet their own more basic needs. And when you got a bicycle addresses the deeper issue of access and ownership. Now you own a means of access and you can pedal your ass anywhere you need to be. And then you can get your own food and get groceries and get to other resources and opportunities. You know, opportunities are few and far between, and a lot of times they're way across town. But now we saw that guys that had bikes, gals that had bikes, we saw people ride to Jacksonville. We saw people go visit family, people start businesses. And we just realized, hey, we're really onto something here. This is the best thing that we ever did. And, oh, by the way, we could probably stop letting people take the nice Cannondale road bike for transportation, and we can refurbish that and sell it. So we started with some pop-up shops, and we sold some of the better bikes, and we realized people will buy these bikes, especially when we price them like we do, which is super affordable for what you're getting. And then we did a couple of those and convinced ourselves we can do this and it's a more sustainable way forward. All that to lead to, all right, cool. We're gonna open up WellBuilt Bikes, which is really just the Well was the nonprofit that had built all those things. So we converted the recycle bin into. It was a joke at first, like the Well is building bikes. They're well built, but it stuck, and it turns out it's worked well. It's been a really well. It's been a good brand for us and a good descriptor of what we're doing. And so we're refurbishing old bikes. We take old bikes as donations. If you have one sitting in your garage, we'll take it, breathe new life into it, get it ready. And then those get triaged into storeroom. Like we sell those in the retail storefront. So if you need a bike, you can come buy one from us, but then also they can be folks without money can get them with us through an Earn a Bike program. So now they don't all build their own bikes, but they come in, they put in 10 hours of community service hours, at the end of which they graduate the program, and they purchased with their time a bike, lights, lock, helmet, water bottle, a safety class, a lifetime membership to the co-op, and a 3-month after tune-up so they can come back and get their bike maintained as well. And they buy all that with 10 hours of work. And it's a phenomenal program. It's working really well. And actually, I don't know when you're airing this, but we just passed Halloween, which was our 2 years open. So we opened up on Halloween because the mall was doing trick-or-treating and we were almost ready. So we opened up. I don't know. That's a bit of a story, but you asked how it started. That's a bit of the story that kind of got us to where we are running a bike shop, which was never in the cards, was never something it was not written in a strategic plan anywhere. But eventually social enterprise was. And then eventually, and this wasn't the first business we launched, but it's the one that's smartest. It's the one that's most likely to succeed. Like we started a lawn crew, and I mean, dude, in Florida, it's so hot. There's ninjas out there mowing lawns. I was like, this is great. It keeps 3 guys busy, but we need to get out of this game, get into something more sustainable, more winnable. And so, yeah, we've come down on WellBuilt Bikes and hope to do many more iterations like it.
That was so fascinating. I mean, that was awesome. I did not expect any of that. I mean, such a great story. So, kind of what I heard you say is it sounded like, did you start a nonprofit and then find a for-profit to help the nonprofit?
Yeah, good question. That's a really good question. No, but I did start a nonprofit. So I didn't want to. So this all started out of my house. I lived in what we called an intentional community. So I told you I was talking people into hanging out with the poor, and I talked a bunch of people into moving into a poor neighborhood, Ybor Heights, and we moved into right on the corner of Nebraska and Lake Avenue. Back in the day, that was the main drag between Robles House and College Hill Projects, and right across the street from like the main liquor store. It was popping off. And we were like, look, we're going to move into this neighborhood. 10 of us are going to live in one house. We're going to live 3 in a bedroom so that we don't have to make money. So we can live out of the food pantry we're running. We can get by on $100-200 a month, which, by the way, I recommend anyone doing anything entrepreneurial does that anyway, because you got expenses to build the thing. And if you can streamline your life, living 10 people in a room is a good idea. But we did it for a lot of reasons. To embody sharing, to learn that we don't need privacy. It was a bit of a cult. We looked at it a little bit like a detox from a culture that taught us to be comfortable, to be safe, to ignore the poor. Like there was so much we wanted. So we were like moving in for like self improvement even, but then with a conviction about loving our neighbor. Like, look, we're going to move into a poor neighborhood and our neighbors are going to need help, material help, physical help. And so we're going to have to start dinners. We're going to open up our house. And so we kicked the doors open on this house. It was ridiculous. So that was really the first iteration. We literally, if you were on the street corner, would give you a card with our phone number and address and be like, come on over. And actually the phone number wasn't any individual. We set up a Google Voice that rang all of our phones. So you call this line and someone in the network would go, hey, what's up? How can I help you? And it was just a way to reach out to a neighbor. We should bring that back at some point. But what ended up happening is a couple people emerged as like heroic and answered all the calls. And then one of them always called me to tell me what needed done when I was like, oh, great. You answer all the calls and then I have to do all the work. But anyway, so that happened. Well, eventually the wheels start coming off. So someone's about to have a mental breakdown in the house, one of the guys, and then there's, because we had people living in the house, on the porch, in the yard, like people were on the streets, and we're like, well, I got another couch, and we got a flat spot on the roof. We had a guy on the roof. We had a lady on the porch. We had people in the rooms. And so we filled the house up. Well, eventually there's a like 1 month in particular, there was a stabbing in the kitchen. One of the cars disappeared. There were 3 break-ins at the house that month. And, some people are starting to twitch and we're like, hey, maybe we went a little too far. So that's when we opened the drop-in center. And when we open the drop-in center, look, if you want to open a place, you're going to need insurance. You're going to need a bank account. You need a lot of things. And so that's when I reluctantly formed a nonprofit. In my mind in the beginning, I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to like build a community, be good neighbors. I'm not asking the government's permission to do this. I don't need tax exemption. And then eventually you're like, no, actually it's super helpful to get that. So we started a nonprofit. Now, the question about the for-profit is we've built a couple businesses. We now have 3 LLCs underneath the umbrella of the 501c3. This is a brilliant model that we came across from a place in Birmingham that is doing this. But basically, an LLC that is solely owned by a 501c3 is itself a 501c3. It to the IRS, it is what's called a disregarded entity. Look it up. It's the most impressive thing I've read in all of tax code. And I'm like, I don't know why everyone's not doing this, because now I can go open a bank account as WellBuilt Bikes. I can do payroll as WellBuilt Bikes. I can have liability insurance as WellBuilt Bikes. As far as anyone ever needs to know, there doesn't even need to be an entity behind us. Fully autonomous subsidiary. However, when we go to do a 990 at the end of the year, we file one 990 for all 4 entities. That is because to the IRS, those things are just programs that your nonprofit runs. And so it's a nonprofit business that all of the sales revenue goes back into the mission of the organization, and so we started the lawn business. We have a community garden initiative. We've got a couple other businesses that were, let's say, in the making. Right. And then the thing that's really worth pointing at that has been successful and has got a lot of good attention has been WellBuilt Bikes, which is really leading the way with this and becomes the template for us.
Wow. That is too cool. I know you already talked about some of the challenges, but what other challenges, along the way?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a challenge I think a lot about is, and I think it's a, I know you're you're particularly interested in talking around social enterprise, social entrepreneurship. And I think, so one, I think all business will eventually move toward social entrepreneurship. Like, will, right? It will need to, that's why you see greenwashing. These things need to change, and they will change. Already the definition of the purpose of business is being redefined for stakeholders rather than just shareholders, all these kind of things. Nonprofit is going to have to move toward making money, right? You can't just panhandle your way forward forever, right? So everything is going to converge. Social enterprise will hopefully cease to exist because it's just the way all business is done, right? That you have to have purpose to be socially minded. However, what I find now in the reality so I can like live in a world where we're going and I know where it's going to be and I aim at that and try to rehearse that reality today. However, today, our minds are not built to think this way. So there is a template, a dichotomy that is nonprofit for profit. So even your question before is like, wait, you had a nonprofit, there's a for, we think in these terms and it makes sense. Ultimately, those are just tax distinctions. But here's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, I'm not going to be able to cite this exactly, but there was a study done, a psychological study. This was somewhere in, I want to say Russia, somewhere, Ukraine or something like that. And so, anyway, there's a village and they went to this village and they said, hey, we need to dump, let's say, toxic waste. And it's going to be bad for you. It's going to be bad for your children, but it's good for the country. Like the motherland needs this. And we need to put it somewhere. And we want to put it here, but we're asking your permission because it's going to be bad for your people. The majority of people, so they split two groups in this village. In the first group, they just said that, can we do it? Would you give us permission? Your blessing. The majority of people actually said yes. Like, yes, this is good for the country and we will carry the burden, right? The other group of people, they gave the same ask, but they added compensation. They said, and we're going to pay you. All of them said no. Because there's different parts of our brain that function based on philanthropic, let's say charitable purposes. Like, I will do what's right for the good of the world. I will sacrifice, right? And there's another part of your brain that does cost benefit analysis. So when I was, and we still do a ton of food distribution with the hungry, like, the drop-in center, groceries is a big part of what we do, community gardens. When I go tell someone I give sandwiches to homeless people, it's easy to get money toward that program. Here's money for food for the hungry. It's very clear and obvious. I will donate to that. But I'm like, but they get hungry again. It's creating dependency. Like, it's not wrong, but it's not ideal, right?
Right.
But we understand that, and I can raise money that way. Then I move into social enterprise space. And I'm like, I need donations for working capital to build a machine that can address the deeper issues, that can help people meet their own more basic needs so they don't get hungry again. And something short circuits and we can't make the connection because now you're into a business mindset. It gets a little more cost benefit analysis. And it starts moving toward what we're more familiar with, which is like venture capital or investment, where it's like, am I going to get a return on this investment? Is this going to 10x return? And it's really interesting. People that, and rich people do both. I know individuals that go, I will give $1 million or $10 million to this business for a return on investment. And I will also write a huge check to this charity for a tax write-off for whatever, which, by the way, a lost investment is a tax write-off. And I find myself in the middle of those. And I actually think it's the challenge to every conversation around the emerging enterprise, right? The business to be leveraged to benefit the world, to address the needs of our community with market solutions, to create the impact we want to create. It's like, I will always share food with the hungry as long as people are hungry. But I want to know why they're hungry, what mechanism is causing them to be hungry. And I want to go upstream and find out how these bodies are ending up in the river, right? Like, we need to go further back to the source. And when we start doing that, well, hopefully I'm fleshing that out enough for you to go that. And I would say that's been the biggest challenge. It's like, I can watch very smart people short circuit because I'm in a lane that doesn't exist in their minds. And it's very hard to talk to both parts of the brain at the same time. And that is the thing I'm really trying to figure out. Like I'm spending most of my time chewing on that problem because I don't know how to talk to you and talk to both parts of your brain at the same time to bring them into concert to go, the return on investment is the philanthropic move.
Right.
I will give you your seed. Like lend me $1 million. I'll give you $1 million back. Just, I will use the return on that investment as that's the gift to the community, which you would think would be an easier ask than just give money to feed the hungry. But it turns out it's been a little more complicated. So I'm puzzling over that a lot these days. And I think it's been a core challenge. And it's a core challenge at the heart of running the business where you go, you have the bottom line of dollars and cents, and then the bottom line of the impact that you aimed at to begin with, and the prioritization of mission over market. Like that's a never ending, it reminds me of Jesus saying you can't serve two masters. Like there's a bit of a wrestling match going on between those things. And it feels sometimes like two masters, and you've got to settle on driving values that will help you to make the right decisions, even if they're not the most expedient decisions at the time. Right.
That is great. That is, I mean, I couldn't say any of that any better. So, so pretty much out of time. That was it. This was.
I talk too much. Yeah.
Everything you said was dead on, and everything to people looking to get into the world of a, for-profit, nonprofit, they need to hear that. And that's what we're here for, is to help them. Everything you said is things that they needed to hear. And just so happy that we were able to connect and do this interview.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me.
What's next for WellBuilt Bikes?
Well, like I said, we just finished 2 years open. I am currently in talks with I don't know if I'm not supposed to use their name just yet because it's not official, but there's there's a national brand that does things with kids. Nice. We're in conversation with about launching a local chapter of their entity here to facilitate rides with kids. We were never aiming at working with kids, but people that work with kids are aiming to work with us a lot. And it's a natural overlap. Bikes are a great teaching tool for resilience. And so we've talked to the Boys and Girls Club. We work with Eckerd Connects and kids in the foster care system. We work with Pepin Academies we actually set up a replica of our shop in their careers class. So half of their room is set up as like a bike shop where they're getting bike tech education. And then we work with some of their students in a transitions program. And so this emerging piece of like youth development and education seems inevitable. Like, again, because the community is telling us what direction is next. And it seems that there's a demand here. And I like it because I love the idea of raising up and teaching tools of resilience and self-determination to the youth. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm game. Let's do that. That's probably next. I do have a couple ideas, let's say beyond the scope of WellBuilt Bikes, is to iterate on the model of business in other arenas, in other markets that aren't necessarily around bicycles, but maybe that's for another time. I mean, those are still in development, right? So there's a lot to do there. Those are a couple of things that's next. Yeah.
Nice.
I need to hire some more staff as well, but we need to make the money for that.
There you hear it, folks. If you're looking for a job in the future, reach out to WellBuilt Bikes.
Well, and if you're looking for a place to give and invest and get past this challenge we're talking about, I could use that help as well to help staff this out appropriately so that I can get back to the bigger picture and planting those next things.
Nice. Well, how can people contact you?
Yeah, so a couple easy ways to find us. I mean, at WellBuilt Bikes on any social platform, particularly on Instagram. Like that goes straight to me. If you message at WellBuilt Bikes, I'm going to get it on my phone. And that's a great way to get a hold of me because I'm not going to put my phone number out here. I can share my phone number with you there. I will just say, John at welltampa.com if someone needs to message me or shoot me an email. But yeah, I mean, at WellBuilt Bikes would be a great way to find us, and other things the Well is getting into as well.
Very cool. Well, hold on a second. I'm going to close us out. There you have it, folks. It's John Dengler of WellBuilt Bikes. He's the founder. He's making things happen, and we're going to keep in touch with him, and hopefully we can bring him back in the future so we can get an update either on WellBuilt Bikes or some of the other things that he's starting. It sounds like there's a lot. There's a lot there on deck, so we're very excited. So that's all we have for you today, folks. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like we would just want to remind you, stay up to date with our latest content, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook. You know, hit the like button and tap that darn bell, please. Also, if you know somebody that has a startup or a social entrepreneur enterprise, whether it be for profit or nonprofit, we want to share their story with the community. So please put them in contact with us. Like I told you, we actually have a sponsor. Mind My PC. It's an IT outsourcing solution for solopreneurs and small businesses who need but can't afford on-site tech services. They provide 24/7 service. They are available to you to help your business, take your mind off of little things so you can focus on what you do best, and that is your business. So thanks again for listening. Until next time, don't stop pursuing your dreams because you heard it from John. You've heard it from everybody else. Yes, the road is long. It is hard. Do not quit. Do not quit. Do not quit. Sky's the limit. I believe in you. You can do it. Go make it happen.